to read through the text. Okay, I'm going to read through the text. Okay, let's go. Okay, so we're chapter 3 now. Now, bearing in mind for the flow of the book, chapter 1 tells you that you have 2 souls. Chapter 2 tells you 3 dimensions to the soul. Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. Nefesh is the more functional part of the soul. Ruach is the more emotional. Neshama is the more intellectual. But out of one of those 3, you're either functioning on Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, right? In other words, you're either in an emotional mood, an intellectual mood, but out of that will come 10 powers, which I've tried over the last few weeks to give you with analogies of the 10 plagues, etc. Now, the reason, before we start the chapter, the reason why we have 10 powers within us is because, and this is the key word, because when God created the world, God is infinite. When God created the world, God, in his infinite wisdom, brought out 10 powers from within him. Just give me a minute. I see tears joining. Hold on one sec. Okay. So let's go as follows. Remember, we're learning a text. If I'm not clear, please ask. For the flow of the book, it goes as follows. Chapter 1 tells you that you have 2 souls. Chapter 2 speaks about the 3 dimensions of the soul. Either it's a more functional, a more emotional, more intellectual. Chapter 3 is going to tell you how 10 powers come out from within you. And this is when we speak about the godly soul, we speak about the 10 powers of the soul. Chapter 4, we're going to learn how the soul expresses itself in this world. Chapter 5, we're going to learn the great quality of learning Torah. And therefore, whether the shir is good or not, don't worry, because what we're really doing is the subject is becoming interwoven in our brain. What's becoming interwoven within our brain? God, because we're learning God's wisdom. We're going to learn about the great quality of that. Then 6, 7, 8, and 9, we're going to learn all about our animal soul. I'll put it on a computer for me, kids. Chapter 10, we're going to learn a righteous person. 11, a wicked person. 12, I'm battling here. Just put it on your computer. Guys, I'm just changing to computer. I'm not going to use my phone again. I get too many interruptions. Okay, so now, got it? Okay. So chapter 3 is the 10 powers of the soul. Now, the reason why we have 10 powers, the reason why there are 10 powers in our soul is because when God created the world, God brought out within him 10 powers. Why 10 and not 9? Why 9 and not 11? Kabbalah says it doesn't know. But God brought out 10 powers within him. Since then, 10 becomes the perfect number. Okay? Now, give me one second. I'm just changing the computer. Yes. Okay. Hello, guys. Good. From now on, I'll always use a computer. I apologize. Can you all see me? Hope you can. Okay, good. Okay, good. Now, so why do we have 10 powers within us? Because when God created the world, God brought out 10 powers from within him. So because God brought out 10 powers within him, and we have part of God within us, our soul also has 10 powers. Now let's read through the text. For those who have the book, we're on page 66. And we're going to read through the whole chapter today. Each one of these 3 dimensions that we spoke about in the previous chapter, what are the 3 dimensions? Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. Nefesh is the part that goes into our liver and pervades our whole body. Ruach goes into our heart and pervades our whole body. Neshama goes into our heart and pervades our whole body. But generally when you function through one of those 3. Plula me'esa bechina says 10 faculties, has 10 powers. Now if you look at note number 1, he says, elsewhere example, leave out the bracket, the Alter Rebbe makes it clear that the soul does not consist of 10 faculties, but rather manifests itself through them. In other words, I want you to imagine that you have 10 bulbs, 10 vessels, 10 of these that the light shines through, a blue, a green, a red, a yellow. You have 10 powers with which the soul expresses itself. Because the soul itself is almost infinite, so it shines through these 10 powers. Why do we have 10 powers in our soul? Keneged esespheris elyonis, corresponding to the 10 supernal powers that our soul came from them. In other words, when God created the world, he used 10 powers to create the world. or he shone through 10 powers. Because God created the world with 10 powers, we also have 10 powers. Now, those 10 powers up on high are divided into two. And these 10 are divided into two. Shehain shalish imas, 3 mothers. Why are they called mothers and not intellectual powers? Because they give birth to the 7 emotions. And what does a mother do? One of the functions of a mother gives birth. The Sheva Kefulis, and 7 doubles, because each one of the 7 emotions are in fact connected. They don't stand independently. Within love, there's a little bit of severity. Each one are connected to the other. Now, Pirish, what are the 10? Pirish, Chochmah. The first power is Chochmah, a power to chap something, a flash of inspiration. Bina, when I have that flash of inspiration, that seed, I analyze it backwards and forwards until I clearly understand it. That's called Bina, understanding. Once I've clearly understood something, I've got to get it out of my intellect into my heart. And that's called Das. And Das, I'm going to translate as meditation. After you've clearly understood something, if you clearly understand something, it stays in your brain. How do you get it into your emotions? By living it, by meditating it, by keeping the Chochmah and Bina together, by keeping these 2 faculties together, by keeping Chochmah and Bina together, just meditating what you clearly understand, that's called Das. What's the 7 emotions? The Shivas Yemei Binyan, and then comes the 7 days of building. What does it mean, the 7 days of building? How did God build the world? Chesed, Sunday is Chesed, kindness. Gvura, Monday is Gvura. Tuesday is Tiferes. And therefore it says, by the way, if you look in the Gemara when it speaks about astrology, a child who's born on Monday, deep down is naturally argumentative. And Sunday is naturally kind. It's amazing to see when you learn Jewish things on astrology, but that's for another time. So because God created the world with 10 powers, and 10 powers, 3 intellectual powers, and 7 days of building, the soul that we have within us, I want you to look at the soul within you. Let's analyze the soul. Our soul that we have within us is divided into 2. Seichel umidas. You have intellect and you have emotion. So if you want to know who you're all about, our body is just a vessel for the soul. We're speaking about the godly soul. And how do I let somebody in? Hold on. I've got to let somebody in. Let me think. Somebody wants to join. Don't know how to do that. Okay. So the Shivas Yemei Binyan, the Shivas Yemei Binyan, Chesed Gvurah Tiferes. So I have Chochmah Bina V'das. I have 3 intellectual. Sorry, but I'm on the middle of page 67. V'kach b'nefesh ha'adam. Middle of 67. Kach b'nefesh ha'adam. Just as there are 10 powers above, and those 10 powers above are divided into 2. Seichel umidas. My soul within me is divided into 2. I have intellect and I have emotion. So who's the real me? The real me is not my body. The real me is my intellect and emotion. Let's look at the intellect. Haseichel koil. My intellect has chokhmah, an ability to grasp something, and flash of inspiration. Bina. My intellect has an ability to analyze something, and vadas, and then to keep it all together. Vahamidas. And what are my emotions? Hein avas Hashem. I also know that I have a love for Hashem. Upachta, I have a fear for Hashem. V'yirosa, I have an ability to have awe for Hashem. Ulefora, and to glorify God. So in other words, I have intellect and 7 emotions. So he's only mentioned 3 of them. Now, v'chochmah bina v'das, the 3 intellectual powers, chochmah, the ability, the flash of inspiration, bina, the analytical one, das, the ability to hold it all together, nikra imos, they are called mothers. Umokalamidas, they become the source for the emotions. Ki amidas hang told us chochmah bina v'das, because your emotions are commensurate to what's going on in your brain. That's amazing. So if you want to change yourself, by the way, if you want to change yourself, project your mind on the right things. If you get up in the morning and you think good, and you think about God, and you think about all the good things that God is doing, you think about life, from the intellect, it won't stay in intellect. All of a sudden, your emotions will flare up. Your emotions are commensurate to your intellect. He's going to explain. Ubira Inyan, the explanation is as follows, page 69. Ubira Inyan, the explanation is as follows. Ki haseichel shebenefesh hamascheles. Right? Ki ha'inyan haseichel shebenefesh hamascheles. The intellect in my intellectual soul, shua maschel kol dover. This power that I have to comprehend something, or this power that I have to be cognitive of something, to grasp something, nikra b'shem chokhmah. It's called chokhmah. What does chokhmah mean? Koyach ma. If you look at the Hebrew word chokhmah, it's made up of 4 letters. Juggle the first 2 letters, and it reads koyach ma. I was thinking about it. I know everything about a particular subject, and all of a sudden, flash of inspiration. Where did that flash come from? Where did that download come from? It's called chokhmah. So chokhmah is, it just came. Boom, it came to me. I had a flash of inspiration. Like Archimedes. Eureka, I found it. That's chokhmah. Remember Eureka? No, Archimedes. I think he was in the bathhouse or something, and he had a new idea, and he went running down. I have a new idea. Now, when you bring that new idea into actuality, how do you bring that idea? The flash of inspiration, how do you bring it into actuality? When you think about the other thing, when you think about the thing, in order to understand the thing well, page 70, and you go into the depth of the matter. In other words, you take the flash of inspiration and you analyze it. You analyze it backwards, forwards, inside out. You think it through, you question it. What happens? No matter what thing you're thinking about in your brain, nikra bina, that's called bina. So bina is when you take the flash of inspiration and you clearly dissect it and think it through clearly. That is called bina. Now, some people are naturally cognitive, and some people are naturally analytical. What happens to these two? But we all have both of them within us. What happens then? Page 71. The Haim, they are the Av Va'ain. They are the father and the mother. The Chokhmah, the flash of inspiration. A new idea came to me about God. Boom! That flash is called the dad. When I analyze it, that's called the mother. I would say that's why perfect pregnancy is 9 months. The father gives the seed, and the mother develops there for 9 months. And what happens after that? What happens after I've had the father and the mother? What happens after I've had the flash of inspiration and I've analyzed it? That's going to, something amazing is going to happen. All of a sudden, I'll have a love for Hashem. Because what was I thinking about? I was thinking about God. So I'll have a love for Hashem. I'll have an awe for God. I'll have an awe in my brain, and I'll have a fear in my heart. The difference between awe and fear, by the way, awe is a more intellectual thing. I stand in awe. Pachad is when I'm afraid. So in other words, all of a sudden, I didn't even know I had emotion or so much emotion, and I've given birth to emotion within me. What I want to stop here and say is we don't realize how much power we have to arouse, to reveal the soul within us. You have to look at it. We are like a wellspring. Sometimes a wellspring can get clogged up. It can get diverted. All you have to do is take away the clogging, the things that clog it, and all of a sudden you'll have that wellspring come up. But don't live life without expressing emotion. Don't live life cold to it. Experiences could have happened in life that block our emotion. You've got to bring it out. And how do you do it? By concentrating your mind on the right things. Now, let's go further. 71. Second paragraph. Right, the intellect in my rational soul, in other words, in my brain, when I will think about the greatness of Hashem. What are we discussing? Let's say we're discussing how God fills all the worlds. That in every single human being, in every single animal, in every single fish, in every plantation, in every inanimate matter, there's part of God within it. By the way, it says when Mashiach comes, inanimate matter will be able to speak. So don't for 1 minute think that inanimate matter doesn't have a soul. Inanimate matter will be able to speak. And the stones are going to say to us, when you walked on me, which actually I felt, were you walking on me for good stuff? Then you had every right to walk on me. If not, you had no right to walk on me. So when you start learning about how the Eibishter fills all the worlds, and the Sovev Kolomim, and then you start learning a level of God where God transcends all the worlds, encompasses all the worlds. In other words, there's a level of godliness that is so high that it can't be revealed in the world. I mean, there are pages and pages and hundreds and thousands of essays on this. And then we learn a third subject, how in fact this whole world is nothing before God. So we've learned how God fills the worlds, how God encompasses the world, and how in fact this whole world is nothing before God. And there are thousands of pages in that. What happens if we would learn it all? Nolda, or part of it. Nolda, it will give birth. V'nisoyer, it will be aroused. All of a sudden, when I'm learning how God fills the world, encompasses the world, and how the whole world is nothing before God, in fact, I will have a new fear for God in my brain. I'll have an awe for God in my brain. I will fear, I will stand in awe, and I'll be humble before the greatness of God, of this God who's so great that he's without end or limit. And not only that, it won't only stay in my brain, and I'll have a fear for God in his heart. And not only will I have a fear, and not only will I have a fear for God, but all of a sudden a love for God will burst out in my heart. A burning heart, like an intense love, like a glowy love will flow in my heart. The cheshvan, with a passion, the chafitza, and a desire, the chukka, the nefesh hakaka, and a longing and a yearning soul for God. All of a sudden, I thought I had no feelings for God. All of a sudden, my intellect gave birth to emotions of fear and love for God. That level, by the way, is called the klois hanefesh. It's called the expiring of the soul, where the soul just wants to leave the body. In other words, some people get to that level where their soul, they get to such a longing for God, their soul just wants to leave their body. By the way, that is the secret of Lechadodi, which if we have time at the end, I will tell you about Lechadodi at the end. How that song is really about that, Klois Nefesh. That's about my soul wanting to leave my body. Not only that, Vagam, Kol Sanafsha. Kol Sanafsha. Now you can understand, when King David was writing poetry, when King David was writing Tehillim, he wasn't writing poetry, he was experiencing moments of where his soul wanted to leave his body. Right? Vagam Kol Sanafshi, my soul will want to expire. As King David writes in Tehillim, my soul is thirsty for you, God. Just like a person who's been in a desert, his soul is thirsty for water, so too a person gets to such a thirst for God. Another expression King David writes in Tehillim, my soul is thirsty for you, God. We can get to that level of absolute love for God. We can arouse the fear and love. Come back to the central theme. You don't realize how powerful your emotions are. All you've got to do is arouse them. Now, where does this love come from? Okay, let's be a bit complicated. Do you remember in chapter 1, when we spoke about the animal soul, we said that the animal soul is made up of 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air. And we said everything in this world is made up of these elements: fire, water, earth, and air. And it's worth Googling and researching it a bit. But nonetheless, what was fire of the animal soul? We said fire in the animal soul was anger. And we said water of the animal soul was lust, because water makes things grow. What is fire of the godly soul? But Simon, this thirst that you have for God, this longing that you have for God, that's from the foundation of fire of the godly soul. So fire of the animal soul is anger. Fire of the godly soul is a thirst for God. And that's why if you look into those people who study natural science, and also those people who study Kabbalah, they will tell you that where is the foundation of fire in the godly soul? It's in the heart. Now, what was water of the animal soul? Water was lust. What's water of the godly soul? It is intellect. Why is water intellect? So water of the animal soul was lust. Water of the godly soul is intellect. Why? If you think about water, if you put water in a room, it'll be naturally colder than things around it. And water can also be gushing. When I'm intellect is when I'm thinking something through, I don't want to be disturbed. When I'm teaching, I'm flowy. And that's what's explained in Kabbalah, in mysticism, that the level of wisdom, intellect of the godly soul is actually water. Okay, good. Now on page 74. So what we've learned so far, we've learned that we have chokhmah, bina, v'das. We've learned that we have an ability to chap something, ability to analyze something, and how this chokhmah and bina are the father and the mother, which will give birth to emotions. What are those emotions? A fear and a love for God. Now, if you're thinking about God a lot, how God fills the worlds, encompasses the worlds, and how the whole world is nothing before God, all of a sudden you'll be intellectually inspired, but it'll flow down into the emotions. What are the emotions? Love and fear. Those are the main 2 emotions. So what about all the other emotions? The other 5, which we spoke about at length in the last 2 shurim. Ushara midas kulan, all the other emotions. They're offshoots, they're offspring, they're auxiliary powers of love and fear. So the main 2 emotions that you want to arouse in life is love and fear. Is explained in another place. Now, so far we've explained Chochmah and Bina. What is Chochmah? Chochmah is the power to grasp something. Boom! Flash of inspiration. Bina is the analytical. The father or the mother that give birth to primarily love and fear. All the other emotions are auxiliary powers, they're offshoots of love and fear. You want to arouse that love and fear. You want to get that love and fear flowing. So what about the third intellectual power? Da'as. So look at the bottom of page 74. We're going to explain Da'as. The Hadas, which is simply translated in English as knowledge, Vahadas, bottom of page 74, Hum Loshen for Ha'odem Yoda Eschaba. Where does the word Das come from? In Hebrew, when Adam and Eve are intimate, it says Vaha'odem Yoda Es Das Eschaba. Adam knew Eve. So what does the word Das mean? It's a coming together of the male component and the female component. V'hu Loshen his chabrus, his kashus for his chabrus. It's a lotion of attachment and union. When a father and a mother come together, when a husband and wife come together, a child is born. You know, just by the way, a lady asked me recently, it was interesting, a lady asked me if she had a miscarriage quite late in her pregnancy. And I wrote to an expert on it, and he brings from Rabbi Moshe Feinstein that, in fact, those souls are also going to be resurrected. In other words, it's not that it's a miscarriage. That soul is so pure and so powerful that eventually when Mashiach comes, it will be resurrected with everybody else. Just interesting. Anyways, let's go back to the bottom of page 74. The Hadas. What does the word Das mean? It's in the Torah where Adam knew Eve. And they were intimate. His kashus, his chabrus. It's a lotion of attachment and union. What does that mean? That after you've grasped something, after you've clearly understood it, you tie your mind, or as he puts it, you bind your mind with a very firm binding, and you concentrate your mind on that particular subject that you're meditating on, and you don't move your mind away. That is what Das is. So I would say that's Jewish meditation. There's a meditation which we do not agree with, where you get everything out of your mind. No. This meditation is off. You've got a godly subject in front of you. And you think it through. You just walk around thinking it through. That's why in Chabad, we like to learn things apart, that they're engraved in your brain, that you can just think them through wherever you are. Now, why is Das so important? And that's, by the way, where the spinal cord hits the brain. That's where it sits. Why is it so important? Because even if a person grasps God, and even if a person is he understands it all, if he doesn't tie his mind and concentrate his mind, if he doesn't tie his head and concentrate his mind, strongly, diligently, you will not give birth to love and fear. In other words, you will only have, when will your emotions really flare up? Not just if you know the subject, when you meditate on it. So meditation is when you keep your mind on it. That's meditation. If you don't have das, if you don't have this meditation, if you don't have this concentration of mind on the subject, you will not give birth to true fear and love. You'll have vain fancies. You'll have like vain illusions. And therefore, das, and therefore, das, that third intellectual power, is the most important. It provides the sustenance and vitality to all the emotions. Right? You have to have das. In other words, if you know your subject clearly, if you're not concentrating on it, if you're not meditating on it, it won't give birth to proper emotions. And therefore, das is the fulfillment of all the emotions. And it's the life force of all the emotions. And therefore, in das, hidden in das, is fear and love. Pirish, love and fear are all hidden in das. So we have finished the third chapter. So what I hope it wasn't too technical, but what I'm really trying to say is that we have 10 powers in our soul, 3 intellectual, 7 emotional. The main 2 emotional powers are love and fear. How are love and fear aroused? By what you think. Now, I just want to share with you, therefore, in the philosophy of Chabad, you'll understand something. Why Chabad davens late, by the way. On a Shabbos morning, Chabad will always daven later than everybody, because in the philosophy of Chabad, you're supposed to sit down and meditate on something. And when you do daven, it'll arouse the emotions. while we have a few minutes left, I just want to share with you, how do you change your life? So it comes out like this. What you think will arouse your emotions. Do you agree? What you think will arouse your emotions. And according to your emotions will be your speech and behavior. So therefore, if I, God forbid, punch somebody, why am I punching the person? Because he hurt me. He emotionally hurt me. Therefore, I'm punching him. So I'm punching because my emotions are sore. Why my emotions are sore? Because I've thought it through that he's horrible to me. So what do I start with first? The truth is you start with action first. There's no excuse ever to have bad action. And if you, God forbid, become addicted to a bad way of behavior, you stop. First thing is action. Once you've got your actions right, you work on your emotions. And you can work on your emotions. And once you've got your emotions right, you can get your mind right. And then eventually when you start thinking right, all of a sudden your emotions change and your action change. In other words, you don't allow, today, I've got to change my life. I've got to get my actions right. And even if I'm sore, I've got to just say, well, I've just got to move my emotions away. But then eventually when I get my thinking right, my emotions will change and my action will change. But I don't wait for my mind to be right. I change, I can. And I think the key of anything is, by the way, changing your behavior. And this week's parsha is Parsha's Lech Lecho. What does Lech Lecho mean? God says, go. He tells Abraham Avinu at 75 years of age, Lech Lecho, go for yourself. Now, you could have just said Lech, go. Why does it say Lech Lecho? Go for yourself. So according to Rashi, Lech, it'll be good for you. Go, it'll be good for you. I'll give you plenty blessings, God says. But there's another way of learning it. Lech Lecho, go into yourself. Find out who you really are. And when you find out who you really are and you transform yourself, you can become a completely different person. So we should all go on the journey of Lech Lecho this week. Next week, we are starting to learn. And I want you to, if you can, read through the 4th chapter. It's technical, it's complicated, but it's very lekker, by the way. And what we're going to learn next week is how the soul expresses itself in the body. So we all know we have a soul of 10 powers now. How does that soul express itself in the body? I look forward to learning it with you. May you all be blessed with the best week of your lives.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you.